Calling this meeting to order, Monday, November 11th, 6 p.m. Crosby, please do roll call.
Crosby Bugenhagen, here. Mike Gooch.
Here.
Jake Halgenthal.
Here.
Gail Lesage is excused. Dale Porter.
Here.
Eric Schwarz.
Here.
Carolyn Simon.
Here.
Craig Burtz.
Here.
Vito Schwarz. Gone but not forgotten.
Thank you. This is an open meeting and it has been noticed. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, up first we have recognitions. Big Bend Employee of the Month.
So Nikki, could you come forward, please? So Nikki Zimmerman has been nominated as the Big Bend Employee of the Month. Just, you can stay right there. I'll be joining in a minute. So Nikki had many nominators this month. Many people weighed in on Nikki's nomination. But one of the things that was consistent was how she's kept things moving along through changeover in the office from a principal turnover. She's been a consistent mainstay for folks in the school. She coordinates Pause for a Clause program that aids students in need to have warm clothes in the wintertime and a great Christmas for families. She's been the face of Big Bend. She's the first person that people see in the morning, both kids and parents, when they come into the office, and she has a smile for everyone. She never hesitates to lend a helping hand to someone in need, be it a student, a staff member, or a parent. I think one of the most important things that's come through is that Nikki would never expect to be recognized for any of her actions. She does this with an open heart and for all those in the school community. She is always willing to help, and she goes above and beyond to help students succeed. So it's an honor to recognize Nikki as the Big Bend Employee of the Month.
Congratulations.
Good job, Nikki.
All right, up next, our student report, Big Bend student report.
Come on up, guys. First shot in front of the school board.
Talk loud into the microphone, please.
Tom, could you pull up the presentation, please?
Amelia, you might have to bend
Thank
it
you.
down to you.
There you go.
Give us 1 second to get your presentation up, please. Scroll up, Tom. Take it away whenever you're ready.
We're here to talk about Big Bend Elementary.
Talk a little louder into the microphone, please.
We're here to talk about Big Bend Elementary. Student Council. Flyers go out to students. You get 3 teacher recommendations, executive board, 6th grade, and it can't be your first year if you want to be on executive board. Try out, and you have to try out the year before. That is,
me, Kylie,
Amelia, Kaylee, and Remy. Top dogs, theme of the month. October was Be a Buddy, Not a Bully. November, theme of the month is Giving. Teachers choose a top dog. Specials teachers choose one person. That was a good example.
the Bulldog Bolt. So there's a fundraiser from the PTO, and students contact people to donate money to the school, and students win prizes for how much money they donate. So, like, for example, you could win a safe, Apple Watch, and other prizes. And this year we raised $50,000, and then you run and you just like run for raising the money.
How many laps did you guys run?
I run 8, I think.
I ran 16.
Nice. Was there a record? Was somebody the record setter at school? Wouldn't have been me.
At the Halloween party, there's a bunch of different things to do. So there's photo booths. There's a candy drop. So, like, the teachers throw candy and you try and get some. There's a bunch of music, and there's a bunch of games like the soda ring. So you throw a ring around like soda bottles, and then if you get it around one, then you win the soda. And then there's also a costume contest, and if you win that, then you get like a basket of stuff. And then there's a bunch of bouncy houses and snacks. And there's like a snack booth thing. At the Halloween parade, there's a bunch of music playing, and you walk around the school, and you show off your costume, and you cheer for everyone as they're walking around the school. For SAVE, BBES had a SAVE Promise Club for about 10 years. The SAVE Promise Club is open to all 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students. The main goal of the club is to help make our school and community a safe and accepting place where all feel welcome. Meetings take place after school in the library on the 2nd Thursday of every month. They start with a team building activity and then an activity to promote students' feelings, welcome, and safe at school. We participate in service activities to help our community. So, for example, we go to volunteer at the Civilian Army's Red Kettle campaign, and we ring bells and spread holiday cheer at the Mukwonago Walmart. We also work with MHS Save Promise Club for our annual MHS Partnership Day. MHS Save members spend the morning at BBES leading our Save members in team building activities.
Grandparent Lunch Week, this week, November, Big Ben Spearing Days, Student Council picks them. Like, some days we can do Veteran Day, but today we had Camo Day, as you can see. So we try to do 2 to 3 of those Spirit Days a month. We have some examples like Camo Day or like Rainbow Day. We have tons of different ones. Yeah, there should be some pictures. Yeah, like Dress Like Your Teacher Day. Grandparent Lunch Week is this week, November 11th through 15th. Grandparents eat lunch and can shop at the book fair. And we also have an ALP program, which is an advanced learning program, which is for like reading, writing, and math, if you excel in those. BBTV, we record 2 times a week. Students lead it. We basically go through things that we might have, like Spirit Days, or like it varies every week. And we also announce the pledge and do announcements.
Awesome.
Nice job, guys.
Girls.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you very much.
Good job. Well done.
Okay, moving on to citizens' comments. Do we have any?
No.
All right, we don't have any citizens' comments today. Moving on to consent agenda. Looking for the approval of school board meeting minutes of October 28th, 2024. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, those are approved by consent. We have presentations, Big Bend School Gold presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. I was hoping to have a little time in between the students and I, because I figured that this was not going to be as exciting as anything that they did. So I was hoping for at least some comments from the citizens.
Was the Halloween party as fun as it looked?
Yes, it
Okay.
was. I was there the whole time. That was good. The parade was a lot of fun. Everybody was cheering and really excited about doing it. It was, it's really an excellent time.
Were you the rock and roll guy, Mr. Burton?
No, that was Mr. Lombard.
Okay,
Oh,
gotcha.
actually, that was Mr. Warshot, I think. That was our band
Okay.
teacher, Ben. Yeah, but Mr. Lombard was the other guy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What did you dress up as?
I was an athlete. I was wearing a hockey. So Mrs. Zimmerman was a referee back there, and Miss Fleck was a referee, and then yes, we had a couple athletes for the office staff.
You guys are the referees of the
Yes.
school anyway, aren't you?
All right, so we can switch here. So how I like to do when I talk about our data in the school, I try to link everything with what we're doing at the district level. So I have, our district key performance indicators up here. Like to always start with what's happening at the district level, then link that with our school improvement plan, and then link that with what's happening in the classroom. So my first two slides are just what our key benchmarks are. Do you want to go to the next one? Yep. And then again, what we're shooting for at the district level, trying to keep all of this connected. And if we want to go to the next slide. Our first goal is by spring of 2025, 90% of our students will meet benchmark or above on the ELA Universal Screener. So what we are using right now was FastBridge. We left that a little bit vague just because we weren't sure what was going to happen with Ames Web and if we were going to be able to use that in the fall. We used FastBridge, so that's what we're sticking with. Again, I want to relate that with our key performance indicators. So I listed a few of them that we're linking with our district level, again, because we're all in this together. And then the rationale for what I think is a very lofty but reasonable goal of 90% in ELA is that our in 2023-24, grades 2 through 6 ended the school year at 82.8% college pathway and low risk, and then 73.2% for K-5, 83.6% for first grade in ELA. Some of them, again, in the classroom, to link this all together, just some of the action steps that support the goal. Again, students in some risk and high risk, we meet regularly to identify action plans, target specific skills that our students need, and how we're going to help them improve. We spend a lot of time with our PLC process focusing on the focus standards explicitly being taught in the lessons in the classrooms, and making sure that we as the adults understand that and we can work with our students with that. And then, as everybody's doing this year with the state, figuring out different training we're using in our district, letters training, so implementing letters supported practices, grades K through 6. Second goal is even higher, where it's 95% of our students will meet benchmark or above in the math universal screener. Again, relating it to our district strategic plan. Forward math, 75% meeting proficiency, grades 3 through 6, and forward math, 35% students with disabilities meeting proficiency. Our rationale for this goal was that we were at 87.7% of college pathway low risk for grades 1 through 6 in math in the spring. In the classroom, again, actions supporting this goal. We, again, students of some risk or high risk in the FastBridge assessment categories have been clearly identified, action plans in place with targeted interventions, teachers understanding, again, the focus standards, and then through our PLC process, determining essential standards and knowledge, collaboratively creating common formative assessments, collaboratively planning for students who need reteaching and additional time and support, and then planning for students who need enrichment. So where are we right now? Based off of our fall, so I showed you our spring scores based off of our fall. In kindergarten, 79.5%. In ELA or reading, 82.1% in math. I won't go through all of these. I can see that first grade is our lowest area right now, but our total comes out for our average at 79.4% and 84.6% in math, meaning that in order to meet our goals, right now we have about 1 year to jump about 10 percentile points. Here's what Big Bend has been doing since about over the last few years, 2018, 2019. This is our reading scores with a slow trend upward in the right direction overall. And then our math is next. And that is also a slow trend upward in the right direction over the last several years. So that's about where we're at now. I think the next one just asks for questions. Okay. Yes.
Do we track ACT or any higher level scores from how kids do in the high school versus based off of their elementary to see how they've progressed throughout? I mean, that's definitely
Is that correlated at all with Bassbridge?
That would be a question that we could definitely talk to Ben about. He does have data that he shows historically from grade level to grade level, and we do track it from when we have those transition periods, so like 6th to 7th, and then 9th or 8th to 9th.
Yeah, I know it's hard with all the tests changing. It's like not apples to apples.
It is not apples to apples.
Yeah. I wonder how closely that is correlated, though. That would be interesting.
Just percentages. What % of Big Bend now has that letters training completed for the teachers?
Most of our teachers are pretty close. I start end of November.
Yep,
right?
and we're going to talk about that in our Act 20 presentation, but I believe there are only like 3 teachers in the whole district, and they are brand new teachers.
Awesome.
That are not trained.
Perfect.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, we're going to have a little time for Vito Schwarz, recognition of Mr. Vito Schwarz, our fellow board member, friend. Ask everybody, please join me in a moment of silence for Vito. All right, thank you. We're going to have a little time for anybody that want to express themselves, talk about Vito, little memorials to Vito. Dr. Cook, would you like to lead us off?
Yeah, so I apologize for having to read this, but I know I wouldn't be able to get through it without having put some words down on paper. I first met Vito 2 years ago, almost, kind of the time period when I was interviewing for this position. During our first interactions, Vito came across as a very reflective person, but also a bit intimidating. I remember thinking he looked like the intersection of a U.S. Marine and a member of ZZ Top. And I quickly learned that Vito, though, was much more than that. He was an independent thinker. He was somebody who was always willing to bring his perspective to the board conversation or district business, but also someone who was always willing to learn. Vito had a tremendous gift that he brought to each of our conversations. He was a man with strong opinions, but one who also took the time to learn others' perspectives. Over time, I found Vito to be a caring man. When we would speak about a student or staff issue in the district, he would often ask if everyone was okay, if we held the line and maintained a high expectation, and that we were going to provide student support, particularly for the students who committed a wrong, to ensure that they could get back on track. Vito was a strong supporter of our SOAR program, advocating that we create a permanent space for our students, helping talk to business owners in the area for a location for the program, and giving us time to talk with our students about his own journey. It was through these discussions that I was able to fully appreciate the man Vito was. He was a proud Marine, a generous and dedicated businessman who understood the importance of taking care of his employees, and a proud and loving father. Last year, I had the opportunity to attend the spring jazz concert at Mukwonago High School, where his son was performing with the band. Part of that was the middle school performance, and after that middle school jazz presentation finished performing, Vito broke out in Happy Birthday for Jenny Peterson, the band director. And when the crowd turned around and you saw this man standing up kind of in this elevated area, you really had no choice but to join in. I'm going to miss Vito as a board member, but also more as the person that he was. And I'd like to thank him for everything. Godspeed, Vito, and may angels lead you in.
Mr. Wirtz?
So I wrote a big, long letter. Vito loved a great cause and a great fight. Champion for the kids. And I'm not going to read the letter. Maybe I've known Vito for a long time. Darius and Andreas both played football. He would make those boys ride their bikes home after practice because he was roofing. And then when you roof, you work dawn till dusk. And his kid Darius and Andreas would ride their bikes home. And some people thought it was not right, but that's just the way it was when you're a roofer. You work. And quite successful roofer, I might add. He did my house, and I know, Jake, he did your house, and Semper Fi was good company. When in March of 2020, when we had the decision to have kids wear masks or not, Vito, I was in the West Gym at the high school, big crowd. The Vito Army showed up, and he was serious about our kids shouldn't wear masks, and nobody should tell us different. And it was a good day as far as I was concerned, and he showed what a true leader he was. We're going to miss him, and rest in peace, and I hope there's peace for the families involved. Thank you.
Mr. Buckles?
Good evening. My name is Alan. You all know me as the terminal manager for Dousman Transport Mukwonago. I mainly knew Vito through the school board, but had a handful of chances to meet him outside of work. I always found Vito very supportive, easy to talk to, and very approachable. Opposite of Joe's experience at first. Through his work on the board and the current board and school administration, we've all been very supportive of Dousman Transport and our drivers. We at Dousman Transport appreciate all of you, the administration, the board, Vito, his family, his school family, and look forward to supporting each and every one of you and them in his memory. It was a pleasure to know and honor Vito Schwarz. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Anybody else like to come up and say a few words?
I just want to say I didn't know Vito that well, but I believe he was in Elf in the Christmas parade. And we were walking down the street and he yelled out, "Don't forget to get a free hot dog." So, like I said, I didn't know Vito that well, but he rested.
Just hearing about his passing is one of those times that you'll never forget where you are. Dr. Cook called me, and I was leaving Badger Burger, getting ready to go to the football game, and it was tough. He was a great guy, always willing to listen, and he always wanted to know the why. Why do you think that way? Whether you agreed with him or not, you had to know the why. And I think it's a quality a lot of us miss these days. He'll be missed. He loved his community. He loved serving his country. He loved serving on his board, and he was a big part of the board. He'll be missed. God bless Vito. Anyone else? Okay. Carolyn? Good? Okay. All right, we're going to move on to policy. Policies for review.
In front of us tonight, we have a handful of policies coming forward for first reading. We we'll go through these just policy by policy, and please stop me if you have any questions or if there's anything you'd like considered before we bring them through for approval. Under meetings, we're adding some language in there to talk about options for virtual participation by board members during closed session. So that is highlighted in the policy. Are there any questions on 0164 or things that the board would like considered?
I have a question. It states in here that board members would not be able to attend the closed session portion of the meeting virtually. I understand there's concerns about the security of the board member, where they are, if they're attending virtually and things like that. But I do think if a board member is going to make the effort to attend a meeting virtually because they're somewhere else, that they should be able to also attend the executive session part of it. So I'm just looking for feedback or compromise if there's a way that we can do it where the board member, you know, it's up to that individual board member, and we have to trust them to say that they're going to be in a place where nobody else can listen in and hear what they're doing. But I think it's important that we allow that board member to attend.
I agree.
So we can work on some language that would address, you know, for instance, if the board member were to participate virtually, they'd have to have camera on, mic on at all times, and, you know, position themselves in a secure room alone.
I can see how that might be a problem, though, as far as the internet. Okay.
I mean, it's important to always remember that the policy is being written not only for the individuals who are in the room right now, but any future individuals that could be on the board. And so that's the consideration and why the language was presented as is.
I was thinking to myself, who do you not see on the screen that's behind you? Child,
Right.
husband, wife, aunt, uncle, grandparent. I think that could be an issue. That's all.
So do you not want to include that language, or you just?
I don't know how you put the board member in a good spot when you don't know what's going on the other end of the video screen. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I mean,
And I'm just saying, I'm just thinking out loud. There's a lot going on behind you that I don't know if you want people to hear some of the stuff in closed session.
well, they can't hear it. That's the point. So it would be on that board member, the responsibility of that board member to make sure that they're in a secure location where nobody else can listen in, right? So camera on, no background, so you can see what's going on behind you, you know, headphones preferably, right? I mean, there's things you can do to make it work. I understand your concern. I just think to say, no, you can't attend if you're making the effort to join virtually, we should let that board member attend.
I think you should be here in person, but that's just my opinion. Okay, we'll talk about it.
So we'll bring some draft language forward for 2 weeks, or for, not 2 weeks, I'm sorry, for next Monday, that the board can consider. And we certainly can, if it's something that needs more time, we can bring this back in December then to address it.
Okay, thank you.
The next policy up for consideration tonight, the annual report 0174.1. It adds a reference to the authorization of the performance of clerk duties, and the legal citation for the same adoption of these is recommended for clarity and flexibility. So if you look in the policy there, the school board clerk or an administrator, if authorized in accordance with bylaw, officers shall file with the Department of Public Instruction the annual report. Oftentimes, you know, the clerk performs the functions of the clerk for the board, but we take care of the administrative tasks. So this gives us the flexibility to do the administrative task. Policies 3431 and 4431, employee leaves. They've been revised to broaden and clarify the instances where leave will be granted for employees subpoenaed to testify in matters related to district employment. These revisions are recommended for a more comprehensive policy consistent with current demands. So if you look into the 3431, you can see the green edition under leave to testify as recommended language. Policy 4120.04, employment of substitutes. These policies have been revised to incorporate language from the administrative guidelines that are recommended to be rescinded. These revisions are recommended for a more comprehensive policy. So if you go into 4120.04, you'll see proper certification shall be on file if the position requires certification. A statutory background check shall be conducted consistent with 4121 criminal history. So we have some instances, and we just talked about one today specifically around special education substitutes. We need to have, for a long-term position, we need to have a sub that has a special education license for that. So this helps with that. Under 5330, administration of medication, emergency care. The policy is being revised to include the option of students receiving non-prescription drugs that are provided by school consistent with the school's supplies, with parental instructions, dosage instructions, or healthcare provider instructions. This is just recommended for compliance purposes.
I have a question on that one.
Yep.
And it's not anything that's new language, it's more for clarification. Under the administration Narcan,
yep,
it talks about staff training.
Yep.
Do we know what that training is and how often that training occurs?
Christine, do you know the frequency on that?
I don't know the frequency. Noelle is looking into it, and then she'll get an answer back to us.
Okay.
I know the training is free.
Yeah.
A lot of different agencies, as I'm sure you know, will provide it. So
Yeah. The only reason I ask is I talked to somebody who would be included in this, and he just mentioned that he wished the training was more frequent. So just depending on what it is, if we can look at the frequency and maybe bump that up a little bit.
Yeah,
I think they'd
absolutely.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have an answer for next week.
Thank you.
Then search and seizure 5771, to make it easier to follow and specifically note that student search may be directed by an administrator other than the principal. So if you go into the policy, you can see except as provided below, a request for the search of a student or a student's possessions will be directed to the principal or an available administrator. The administrator shall attempt to obtain freely offered consent in writing, if possible, of the student to the inspection. However, provided there is reasonable suspicion pursuant to the above paragraphs, the search may be conducted without such consent. Whenever possible, a search will be conducted by the principal in the presence of the student and a staff member other than the administrator conducting the search. A search prompted by the reasonable suspicion and health and safety are immediately threatened will be conducted with as much speed and dispatch as may be required to protect such persons and property. Whenever feasible, the administrator may secure the assistance of a school resource officer in conducting the search. So that is the additional language in there. And then under patriotic observances, this is new. The policy is added to separate the observance language from the religious activity policy to more accurately distinguish the concepts. So if you look under 8802, you can see that this is a new policy. And you can see that we talk about the Pledge of Allegiance or National Anthem in each school each day in grades 1 through 12. I'll give you a minute to read through that. It also does allow for the moment of silence to commemorate a significant event that has happened and had an impact on our community.
Carolyn has a question.
Oh, sorry, Carolyn.
For that one, why do we specify 1 through 12 versus K4 or 5 through 12? Just
That's the statutory requirement.
Okay.
That the statute requires grades 1 through 12. Since our elementary schools have 4K and kindergarten in them, they get included. But grades 1 through 12 are what the state statute requires.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you. Moving on to personnel topics.
All right, so the first one is around the school calendar. So similar to last year, we are proposing the 2025-2026 calendars. We have 2 drafts in front of you. Both drafts will be taken to the teacher advisory, the parent advisory, and to our admin council for feedback. I put in the board memo some of the similarities would be both of them account for a staggered start for K-4, kindergarten, 7th, and 9th grade. Both calendars eliminate the early release. So early release we have 4 times this current school year. We would be essentially eliminating those. Minus, there's 1 in the calendar, October 29th. We're not calling it an early release because it looks a little different. We're using that as a conference day. And so that daytime conference, bringing that back from 2 to 7 for elementary, middle, and high school. We've gotten feedback this year that the October conferences, the conference windows being after school only, that it didn't allow enough time for some of our elementary teachers to meet with all parents, that they felt a little bit rushed, and that some of our parents preferred to have a little bit of that daytime hour back. And then both calendars account for graduation on June 7th. Some of the key differences. So in the first draft, we are done with school that first week in June, June 5th. However, in order to accomplish that and still meet the state requirements for student instructional minutes, kids would have to come to school on December 22nd and December 23rd, which are that Monday and Tuesday. I would not anticipate high attendance rates on those days, so that's something to consider. The other piece,
checked out like on the 19th.
yeah, yeah, teachers are going to be really excited about that December 22nd, 23rd. But the other piece is that there's 4 professional development days built into the calendar. And Angela will speak a little bit about the rationale for us building some more of those days into our calendar. On draft 2, students end a little bit later, so they end on June 10th, which is that Wednesday. We build in a staff professional development day on that June 11th. But then teachers and students both begin winter break on that December 22nd. Across Waukesha County, so we do look at what other area school districts are doing. There are 2 other districts that are requiring students to come to school on December 22nd and 23rd. Most other districts are giving that full 2-week break, December 22nd and 23rd off. So from a childcare perspective, things like that, that's just something to note. And so again, like I said, we're taking this for feedback to our parent advisory, our teacher advisory, and we'll go from there. And then Angela, if you just want to speak to the professional development piece.
Yep, so some of the feedback that we receive from the teachers and the administrators is that there just isn't enough time during the year to get to some of those curricular pieces, some of that collaborative curriculum work that we're doing within our professional learning communities. And so we just need more days spread out during the school year. This year we had the day in October, and then we don't have anything again until January, and then we have nothing till the end of the year. So just looking to spread that out a little bit. You'll notice that in the drafts we also have days even in May and June. So when we look ahead to the next year, that will allow us to provide training for teachers on new resources that we may be implementing or pilots that we're doing before they leave for the summer. So that was the rationale behind that.
And we did get some preliminary feedback from parents that by building in that full professional development day where students are off for the full day, that's actually easier to plan for than the early release where they're trying to account for that 2 hours off. So again, we'll get the full advisories feedback, but that was something else that we were considering.
And the early release as far as professional development just doesn't quite provide enough time for us to really dig into the work. So that was the reason flipping from the early release to the full days.
So we'll bring this back in December with the feedback, and then ideally in January with the draft that is being recommended for action for approval for the 25-26 school year.
A quick question.
Yeah.
I don't remember with the referendum passing, when is the earliest they'd start construction on the middle school? And is that, do we have like some snow days baked into certain parts of the school be shut down? We have to flex all that stuff?
So the referendum, the work, we will, with the exception of traffic in and out, the work on the site would begin late 25 or early 26, but it would not be butting against the current Parkview Middle School building. So school will be able to run as it runs. One of the things that we might have to discuss next school year would be a modified start and end time for Parkview for the upcoming school year that could create a longer summer at the middle level, which would then give the construction firm more time to go through, finish the renovations of the part of the building that we're gonna save, do the demo, and then the site work. But we're not at that point yet.
Thank you.
Just,
We do account for snow days in this. We build in typically 3. Ideally, we hope we don't have more than 3. But if we do, we have great experience with virtual learning now. So if we really needed to, we could go in that direction.
just one quick question. One of the comments that we get, and I just want to make sure that the community knows, is we get questions about accommodating parent-teacher conferences. Does this schedule accommodate parent-teacher conferences so an elementary parent could get to the high school and so on?
Correct, yeah. So if you look at the bottom, Tom, if you scroll down, if you look at the bottom, we staggered so that you would have an opportunity, yes, to get to whatever level your child has conferences. The 29th is the common day across all levels because, I'm sorry, across middle and high school because of that 2 to 7. But otherwise, yes, they're staggered, so you could go to any.
Then one other thing, I see on here when summer school ends, but when does summer school start, and then is that 2-day, will that affect the start?
The 2-day.
Between draft 1 and draft 2.
22nd,
Oh.
23rd.
Ben?
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Yep.
Enrollment trends and staffing and scheduling.
All right, you get all 3 of us, Tom, Angela, and myself, for this presentation. So Tom's going to start us out, and then I'll jump in, and Angela will finish us off.
All right, so I have some of this information coming up later in the presentation, so you're going to kind of hear a couple of these things here twice, but we're just taking a snapshot here, starting with the 2011-12 school year of MASD total enrollment. So this is counting all more or less just butts in seats and kids on the 3rd Friday in September there. So I will show you a graph when I get to this here later on in finance and facilities, where that kind of goes back to the start of the school district in 72 and 73. And you'll really see that for the vast majority of our district's experience and history, our enrollment, stays between 4,000 and 5,000 students. So kind of condensing this down, you're still seeing our district in these ranges here. So, there's some fluctuations and things that cause them to go up and down. But you can kind of see where we are right now in the 24-25 school year. So in the 19-20 school year, you can see that's where we peaked at just under 5,100 students. COVID year was in 2021. That was very much an anomaly. And then as you can see there in 21-22 and going forward, we're pretty similar to a lot of Waukesha County school districts. I hosted area business managers on Friday, so there was about 30 business managers, and we talked out loud as to what's happening. And honestly, in my professional just opinion on this matter is that we're seeing an enrollment decline at the moment simply because of economic conditions. We have typically always have seen a cohort of students begin at 5K, around the 260, 280, 300 mark, continuously grow throughout their time. And when they exit as seniors, they grow to about a 400-person cohort. So that's our historical stride. And right now, the number of kids that would show up, you know, second graders coming back as third graders, they would grow. And simply that's just kind of on pause at the moment. And I largely suspect for high interest rates. And if somebody has a low interest rate mortgage, it's hard to walk away from that for a high interest rate mortgage. So home sales also have slipped. So we are in a I believe, a temporary declining enrollment state right now. Craig, you had asked this question here back at the annual meeting, so we're just bringing some of this information for you. Here we have a snapshot from the 17-18 school year and the current school year. In terms of certified or professional staff, you could think of this as our salaried personnel, whether they're district office employees, pupil services staff, or Christine, or for teachers throughout the district there. So you can see that we've increased our FTE over this time here. In terms of, if I just back up here, you can see the 409.67 FTE in the current school year. Here is the distribution of where those employees are. So you can see there's about 200 at the elementary level, 57 at the middle school, and almost 110 at the high school level. And then we have our district office personnel, pupil services, student learning that work in Angela's office, our technology staff, SOAR staff, 2 members in the PAC, 2 individuals in our buildings and grounds, Andy Wagner being one of those, and then our lead of our food service and our nursing services there. So that's the distribution of our salaried employees throughout the district. I'll turn it over here to Rachel and Angela.
Yep. So you might be asking, how do we determine our staffing? How do we decide when we increase, when we decrease? So we align to staffing priorities, and our staffing priorities in Mukwonago, first and foremost, to provide the highest quality educational experience for students. Secondly, we want to maintain rigorous course offerings. So we know that especially with a high-performing high school, we need to ensure that kids have classes that they want to be in. And that comes down to meeting the needs of our students. So at the secondary level, students select classes, and we have a priority in the way in which we schedule students to ensure that they get into those classes. When kids are in the classes that they elect to be in, they are more likely to be engaged in those classes. They are more likely to perform in those classes. And then lastly, we want to maximize the impact of our employees. So we want to ensure that teachers are teaching in the courses that they're certified to teach. We want to ensure that teachers are full-time. We want to ensure that, again, that the people are doing the best work that they can do. Can you flip, Tom? So what is our staffing process? So in February, I send out an email. This is new this year. Staff have not historically been asked this. But in February, I'll send out an email, and I will ask for any staff member to let me know if they are planning to retire or if they want to request a transfer to another school. Then we look at what our enrollment is. So I work with Sue Brezovar. She gives me our numbers. So this is what we have for elementary. This is what we have for secondary. Students then at the secondary level start to select their courses. We then determine what number of sections we're going to run at the elementary level based on that enrollment. And then we determine what sections are going to run at the secondary level based on the courses that students choose. I always describe this to people as this is a dance. This is a dance that I do with the principals. I do it with Tom, and I do with Angela. So it's a process because, again, some students choose courses that when they go to schedule, they conflict with other courses that they want, and so we have to give them their backup, and that changes course numbers. Sometimes at the elementary level, it could be off by one student determining, are we going to split the section, are we going to keep it? And so, again, it's truly a dance. And that's when we have to go back. Oh, can you go back, Tom? That's when we have to go back to those priorities. And then after we have that information, we assign staff to those sections. There you go. Yep. So here's where the class size policy comes into play, and here's why we are going to be recommending a revision to it. So we took the class size policy, and here's how it, I guess, intersects with that staffing process. We took the class size policy to some of our administrators, the teacher advisory council, as well as our parent advisory council. And we wanted to look at what are the advantages and disadvantages of that policy. Specifically last year, my first time, right, staffing in Mukwonago, I really started to identify some obstacles because of the policy. But, right, is this a Rachel thing? Is this her first eyes on this? And so wanted to take it to different stakeholder groups to see really what were some of the advantages, what were some of the barriers. So some of the advantages of the policy, one is it gives a defined number for each grade level. Teachers really appreciate that. They know that we're not going to stack an elementary classroom with 30 students. Teachers know when they get additional support in their classroom for a paraprofessional. So again, at the elementary level, teachers can rely on the fact that, hey, if I hit this many students, I'm going to get additional support. Class sizes are in the low range in comparison to other districts in Waukesha County. So we have survey data from all of Waukesha County schools on what their high and low number is for class size, and Mukwonago sits in a very low range in comparison. And then really there's no guesswork. So we did a policy comparison. So we looked at all other class size policies, again, in Waukesha County, and they span everywhere from a paragraph to, I would say ours is probably the most detailed. We're the only policy that specifies support staff. We specify, again, each department at the secondary level and those numbers that should be in each department. And so that's where then those barriers come into play. So one of the biggest barriers is that the class size policy as it currently exists implies that class size is the factor and the only factor that determines when additional support is warranted. What we know is that there are lots of other factors that determine when additional support might be warranted. Low achievement, high achievement, behavior issues, right? There's lots of issues that might warrant a principal or a teacher needing additional support. Another barrier is that it's really difficult to provide that type of flexible support to classrooms from paraprofessionals. So when I have that class that, right, just I need to maybe go in and support some behavior needs while I'm working on a plan. I can't do that in the current class size policy because right now, again, it's based on you get a paraprofessional if you have this many students. The biggest barrier is the one in bold. Staffing decisions made after students are scheduled into their courses have a negative ripple effect on the system. So I'll give you an example. At the elementary level, we set the enrollment, right? I staff, I say this is where I need people. In some cases, this past year, that required some involuntary transfers. We were down a section in one school, but we were up a section in another school. And so we had to transfer people. Well, according to our policy, because it's based on numbers, 2 months later, that same school that I had to transfer someone out of, they got their numbers back. And now I have to hire or move the person that was just moved, right? It's kind of that a dance that you don't want to have to get into. Whereas if we don't have some of those, right, really tight binds, we can be a little bit more flexible. And then the barrier is that it doesn't allow for flexible staffing when necessary. So again, in our high school policy, for example, it states that classes shouldn't run when there's an enrollment of 15 or lower. We have some courses that are just starting out and they might only have 15 students that first year or 14 students that first year because it's just starting out. Our policy says you don't run it. But we know a class that's just starting out, a teacher teaching one section of that course, that might be okay because in year 2, that class is going to have 26 students. And that's sometimes how classes historically work, especially when you're getting them off the ground. So again, we want to be able to have some flexibility, and the policy currently doesn't allow us to do that. And so we took it to, again, these groups to get some feedback. with the intent to bring a revised policy to you in December. Can you click, Tom? So then the last piece that we did was a really in-depth analysis of staffing, courses, and sectioning. So as Tom presented, between 2017 and now, we've seen a decrease in enrollment, but we've also seen an increase in staffing. So we wanted to do some analysis around that. So at the elementary level, they're a little bit more simple in that their class sizes, or I'm sorry, their sections are really just based on what are the student enrollment trends, right? Students don't pick their classes at elementary. Students are assigned, you get this teacher. So that really is just an analysis of what are your student enrollment trends and how does that align to the class policy. At secondary, that was a much deeper analysis. We worked with building administration, student learning, and human resources. And what we did was we pulled 4 years, the past 4 years worth of data. And by data, what I mean is we looked at all of the courses that existed at the high school level that ran, and middle school level, that ran below 75% capacity. What that means is if we say an English 9 class is not allowed to have more than 27 students, how many English 9 classes in the last 4 years ran below 75% of 27 students? We then ran courses that ran with student counts below the board policy. So if the board policy says courses should have 27 students, what courses ran below 27 students? We then looked at courses for the last 4 years have had declining or low enrollment. We met with high school administration to conduct this analysis. So we pulled all of that data and then we sifted through it. We looked at what were some of the reasons why. We looked at, oh, that course was pulled, but actually that course hasn't been offered in 2 years, and that's why it's on the books at a 0% capacity. So we really did an in-depth analysis with this data. After we did that, Stephanie Blue met with the department chairs to share some of the themes that were uncovered through this data analysis. And so then I'm going to have, I think, Angela, you're picking it up.
Yeah, so as Rachel said, when we analyzed the data, one of the things that we looked at was trends. And specifically, we looked at the trend of high school courses with declining enrollment over the last 4 years. And so you can see on the screen, these are the courses that were identified having that trend. The administrators and myself, as well as the departments, have been talking through this, and some of this has been a work in progress over the last couple of years. There's various reasons for this. For example, with the advanced placement, government, and politics, that's a class where they see bumps in that from year to year. So 1 year it might have very low enrollment, and the next year it might have higher. So that would be a course where we might consider alternating or rotating years when we offer that course. Some of our CTE classes listed at the bottom there, they have had to be creative with how they handle that. For example, if you look at Auto Service Tech 2, there were just a few students who were interested in taking that level of the class, where Auto Service Tech 1 has a number of students who are interested in taking that class. So one of the ways they have solved that this year was by taking those children who want Auto Service Tech 2 and putting them with the Auto Service Tech 1 section, one of those sections, and then the teacher differentiates the course for those students. So we've been talking through these courses, what makes sense to sunset the course and not offer it anymore, where can we be creative with our solutions so that we can stay true to our priorities of both staffing and offering that high quality education for our students, and then what courses might we want to rotate from year to year. Tom, if you want to go to the next one. Then this is just a high level overview of what Rachel talked about. When we looked at the sections that were running at 75% capacity or lower, you can see there that in 23-24, which was the last school year, 33% of the high school sections were running at that 75% capacity or lower. And so in noticing that last year, there were some adjustments that were made to last year's scheduling process, and you can see that they were able to decrease that to 24%, so almost a 10% decrease for this year. We are continuing to discuss that and to make adjustments to our scheduling process. Again, that goes back to our scheduling priority of making sure that we're maximizing the impact of our staff. So we expect to see that continue to decline with those adjustments in scheduling. And then finally, as Rachel talked about, at the elementary level, that looks a little bit different. So we're watching the enrollment trends. With the current class size policy that we have in place, we would continue to see a decline in our sections based on our current elementary enrollment.
I didn't highlight that, but the reason for that is that our current policy is that in K1, it's a lower student number to create a section than it is in grades 4 and 5. So as students go up, the class size gets bigger. And so again, we would, just by the policy, see a decrease in the sections.
Okay, Tom, you can click to the last slide there. So our next steps in terms of sectioning and staff projections, as Rachel said, we are working on bringing a proposal of a revised class size policy to our teacher and parent advisory groups to get some feedback from them. And that will happen yet in November still. And then we are currently working on the course guide at the high school. Lots of conversations being had between student services, student learning, the administration, the department heads to talk about what courses, what we need to do with specific courses. We talked about that a little bit. Do we need to sunset certain courses? Do we need to run them on alternate years? Just really looking at what courses we are offering to our students. We are continuing to work, as I said, on ensuring accuracy and efficiency in our scheduling process. And then we're going to continue to bring updates to the board around this work. So we'll bring another update back in December.
Any questions?
I thought of Matt when I saw multivariable calculus. Am I right, Matt?
Eric?
So Tom, as far as enrollment declining, how many students are going and doing like the St. John's route or the St. James route rather than coming to us?
I don't have that data, Eric. I don't have enrollment counts at St. John, St. James. Even some of their enrollment, I mean, doesn't all come from the MASD boundaries, right? There's people who live in the Waukesha School District that attend those schools, and they're not all our students. Even when those students do attend those schools, if they participate in the private voucher program that ultimately our taxpayers are paying for that, we never receive a roster of which kids of ours in our district are attending that. So I don't have that answer. Joe, do you know if we even have access to that?
We won't have a formal access, but what we would be able to generate is who rides the bus and then who attended here and then transferred there. But where we wouldn't be catching kids is those that started, I'm sorry, in the 3-year-old or 4-year-old program. Sure. We don't ever, get our hands on that data. So we can come back with, I would say, an incomplete data set for the board, but it would give us a little bit of an idea as to what we'd be doing. We'd be basing that off of transportation and then records requests as they transferred over to other schools.
Does that include, does that include homeschool?
We would only be able to pull kids who are registered through the state in our area. It's called the Homer system, not Homer Simpson. Homer system. And there would be a roster of kids whose parents have registered as homeschool in there.
Yeah, and we have tracked that in the past. I can definitely bring that back.
Carolyn?
So I was digging into some things. I was looking at Muskego's enrollment versus Mukwonago's enrollment and changes in that. So I found I looked specifically at if you go back to that slide, Tom, with the 2021, the second slide you have up there with the red arrow on it. I was looking at Mukwonago's enrollment in that 2021, 2022 school year where we're at a good peak there, post-COVID, yeah. So we have that to now, we declined about 5%, so 247 students. Then I looked at Muskego data from what I could find online, and they increased from the same time that we lost 247 students. They increased 100 students. I'm like, why did they do that? So then I started going into the housing. I'm just sharing what I found for anyone that cares. So, average age of home buyers has risen. It used to be 49, and in the course of the last year, it's risen to age 56 is the average age of a home buyer. This is general home buyer, doesn't mean they're first-time home buyers. However, first-time home buyer age in the last year has increased. It was age 35, and now it's age 38. So those are your first-time home buyers. So that's a big difference. People that are buying houses, the average age being 56, those people don't have the youngest kids that are attending our district, starting obviously in the K-5 where we get to hook them in and keep them when it was a lot lower. So that was what I found kind of going along with what you were thinking, Tom, with economics.
Does my thought match up with what you're
That's exactly what I'm thinking as far, I mean, interest rates are up, we're in the housing environment, so that's what I look at all day, every day, and we see it all day, every day, so then I dug into all that. So I just wanted to share those findings with that. The next thing that I had looked up is houses per capita for the entire Muskego district and Mukwonago district, and I'm almost done with that data, so I'll bring that to the next meeting, or I'll just share it with you, Tom, and you can share it. So we have 11 municipalities that make up our district, so I've got our district almost done, but now I have to do Muskego's district. But I wanted to look into that and then look at average housing prices, and actually Muskego's average house price is $466,000. Our average home price in Mukwonago is $443,000. So we, even though our average home price is less, Muskego, what I'm assuming and thinking is they have more houses within their district. Therefore, there's more opportunity for those lower income houses for those younger families to move in. So yes, I concur, Tom, with what you're thinking.
Good thing you took multivariable calculus, Carolyn.
All right, I'm just curious about like teacher feedback. Like, what's going to be the sample size from teachers when you're going over like classroom sizes?
So we took this to our teacher advisory. That has historically been the group that we have asked for feedback. The teacher advisory is representative of each school. This year, we've asked our teacher advisory to report back what we talk about at the advisory meeting to their entire school. And then if they hear feedback, they can bring that feedback to us. So it really is, I would say, pretty robust because they're taking it back to the entire teacher body at their schools.
Okay. And then how about like when you do a startup class, you say there's low enrollment, and you might roll it on to the next year. How long do we give it before we get rid of that class? How much time do we give them?
I think it really, right, so no one, to my knowledge, we haven't done the 4-year analysis that we did before. That is a new way to look at this data. I think that, like I was saying before, in terms of like, it's the art. If we're consistently sitting with low numbers for multiple years, I think that's when we have that conversation. So for me, it's three or more years where we're sitting with low enrollment. I'm asking those questions.
Okay.
And I think when teachers are thinking about new courses that they're bringing them based on feedback that they're getting from students, parents, and their team members So hopefully they're bringing a course that they're seeing interest in the first place.
Thank you. Any other questions? Jake?
Tom, going back to the enrollment trends, do we have any like abnormal cohort sizes that could swing some of these numbers?
Sorry, I don't.
Just wondering if when you look at
there.
the size of the cohorts, if there's any maybe nuggets there
Oh,
that could
can
be
I-
used
I
to
can-
predict.
Can I bring that back to you?
Yeah.
In December? Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, thank
I'll
you.
Bring that back. None to my knowledge at this time.
Excuse me. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to the handbook.
All right, so we adopted the new professional staff handbook last year, and just I think a testament to really how in-depth it was. We will continue to review it every year, and for this upcoming year, we are really only, we found 2 revisions that we wanted to make. One is around, it's on page 26, and it's around the year of service. The reason we are requesting that revision is that we do have some teachers who are still on a job share agreement, and the job share agreement for some of those cases is a 60%, 40% agreement. And so rather than saying, because you're only 40%, we're not going to count you as a year of service for our district, we'd like to be able to honor that you taught for the year, even though it was 40%, we want to give you that year of service. Under 40%, we are still requesting that it would be prorated. So a 20% teacher who works 1 day a week, we would prorate that year of service. But because those job share agreements still exist, we'd like to request that revision. And then the other revision on page 31 is the removal of the salary reviews. We feel that with the compensation offer that was approved, thank you to you for doing that, that we have right-sized our salary or our staff, and that really we can eliminate the need for staff to come and individually request a salary review. We just feel that we've right-sized people at this point in time. So those are the 2 revisions. And then in the support staff handbook, we had this language in there, and it was just an oversight that was taken out. And that was that holidays won't be paid if an employee has an unexcused absence on the day directly before or after that paid holiday. So it doesn't mean they can be off, it just has to be an excused absence. If it's a no-show, their paid holiday will not be paid. So this is just an information item. I will go through the proper protocols and come back and do discussion and then action in January.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Moving on to student learning literacy bill.
Okay, so the Student Learning Department is going to provide an update for you tonight on Act 20. Tom, you can go ahead and flip to the next slide already. So Act 20 is legislation that was passed in July of 2023 around the area of early literacy instruction. And what this law does is it mandates specific components for the purpose of ensuring that all students can read by the end of 3rd grade. So the elements that are included in the law, you can see on the screen there. There are a number of them. The first is effective universal instruction in literacy. That's that core instruction that we provide to all students. This law also mandates specific literacy training for teachers of students in grades 4K through 3rd, as well as administrators who work with those grade levels. And then there are a number of testing pieces that are included in this legislation. The first one is a specific readiness screener for students in grades 4K through 3, and there's specific timelines for that screener. And then in addition to that, there's required diagnostic assessments for students who fail to meet the 25th percentile benchmark that the state has set for that screener. So if students don't meet that benchmark, then we as a school district need to do some further testing for those students. And then the final piece is personal reading plans. We need to develop and implement plans for students who show the need for that based on the screener and the diagnostic assessments. So Ben and Michelle have been doing the heavy lifting on this, and they've been leading this work across the district. So they're going to tell you a little bit more about each of those components and where we are with them in the district.
All right, so as Angela mentioned, one of the mandated pieces for Act 20 is that we have effective universal instruction. So basically, the instruction that all students receive in kindergarten through third grade needs to contain all of the following pieces. So phonological awareness, phonics, building background knowledge, oral language development, vocabulary building, writing, comprehension, and reading fluency. And as you might recall back, I think it was 2 years ago when I sat before you and I shared with you the things that we were doing as a district and what the science of reading is, those pieces were all of the 5 big ones that we talked about with the science of reading are listed up there, and all of those pieces are also in the letters instruction that the kindergarten through third grade teachers across the district have been receiving. And so that's something important to note, that as a system, back even 2 years ago, we were already putting these pieces in motion with our training of teachers and in our curricular resources. Something else about Act 20 is that it prohibits use of the 3 cueing system. This was something we also shared earlier. So part of balanced literacy, which is how most teachers my age were trained, would encourage students to use picture clues, to sound things out, to look at the structure of the word, and to basically guess. And so over time, we have found that that is not the way our brains learn how to read, and that decoding should always be the first strategy that we use with our students. And so that 3 cueing system needs to be removed from all classrooms. So that includes any posters or visual aids that we may have had hanging. So we've had our instructional coaches and we've talked to our teachers that if we had those things in our rooms, they need to be removed. That's not something that we do across Mukwonago. And again, that was something that we had started to do back 3 years ago. And so this just kind of is putting us in a really great place, because a lot of the things that this Act 20 is pushing through, we were already covering as a system. And then, again, we don't ask kids to just look at a picture, guess what makes sense. We're teaching them how to actually read. Especially important when they get into chapter books, when they don't have those cueing system pieces to rely on anymore. So, all right. The early literacy curriculum for K-3. So Act 20 does not require schools to change their curriculum. But it does require them to implement science-based early reading literacy instruction, which we are doing. The Wisconsin Early Literacy Curriculum Council did publish an approved list of instructional resources. We are not making any changes to our universal resources for the 24-25 school year. But again, any of those pieces that were shown on the previous slide, anytime we would look at literacy materials, those would be the key components that we would be looking for in a resource.
Michelle.
All right. Yes.
Act 20 was brought forward by who exactly?
So Wisconsin DPI, so our state, it's
That's
specific to the state of Wisconsin.
Yep. Okay.
Yes. All right, so this also requires that our teachers in kindergarten through third grade are given an approved reading training. Letters covers that. All of our training must be started by July 1st, 2025 for our teaching staff. And as Angela mentioned earlier, we have 3 teachers in the system right now who still need that training, and that's because they were brand new to our system this school year. And so we have instructional coaches, including myself, who went through letters facilitator training. So it was like another level beyond what classroom teachers received. And that actually puts us in the position to be able to train our staff. And so we'll be employing some of our instructional coaches to help us train the new teachers. And so we are pretty much complete, aside from those 3 teachers, with that requirement, which is wonderful. And then our administrators are also required to have training. Their training must be completed by July 1st, 2025. This includes reading specialists, principals, And our principal team is starting that training. I think Greg mentioned that earlier when he was up here, and they will be completed with their training mid-March. They're doing their training through CISO 1, and it meets all the requirements that they need for Act 20.
If we're going to talk about assessment, then it's my turn, right? Just to clarify something for you too, Craig. So Act 20 was actually bipartisan, kind of a rare piece of bipartisan legislation that was passed into law. DPI is left with the implementation of it, and it's something that we've all had to struggle through. There are some good pieces to this. There are some things that are definitely a challenge for us. And so, but as we've talked about with being on board with the science of reading as kind of early adopters of that around here, it's left us in a really good position. So, and one of those places would be the early literacy screener. So Act 20 did require the implementation of a single state selected screener. We have been doing something like this for a number of years in the manner of FastBridge. And so this was not a big leap for us. It was just kind of a shift, but it does set some parameters for us that will be a little different than what we've done in the past. Specifically at 4K, students will need to be screened in fall and spring each year, and then eventually 3 times per year for kindergarten through grade 3. This year, because things were messy with the legislation and the implementation, DPI did get trailer legislation passed through the state to allow that fall window to not be necessary. But starting this winter, all students will be screened using this Ames Web Plus screener. The timelines are a piece that are specified by the law, and that is different than what we've had to do in the past. Using as a district screener and whatnot, we've been able to abide by our own timelines and work within what works for our system. But now the state law requires us to have some pretty specific notification requirements, namely that we must notify families within 15 days, 15 calendar days, not school days, calendar days after that assessment is scored of those results. And then we have very specific windows, and you can see those for fall. We must complete the initial screening within 45 calendar days of the start of the school year. Winter, we have a nice big window. Typically, we will screen in January. That's been what we do. And then in spring, we have to complete that screening no fewer than 45, that should say no fewer, I believe, than 45 calendar days before the end of the school year. That puts us about the end of April, which is the same time we do forward exam testing, by the way. So our Aprils will be a little bit crazy around our elementary buildings. It's a little bit of a snafu from a timing standpoint. Tom, next slide, please. So, as Angela mentioned, any student that does not perform well on the screening assessments then must be administered some additional diagnostic assessments. And again, this is a process that we do here in Mukwonago. We've done it for the better part of a decade. The student doesn't perform well on the screener, we do additional assessments to try to really get to the root of why is that student not learning to read the way that we need them to. And so we are set up well to do that. The timeline is a challenge. Again, 10 calendar days of the screener, we have to complete the diagnostic piece. And so that will be a piece that we grapple with this winter and moving forward. But our FastBridge assessments will serve very, very well as those diagnostics. Plus, we have a number of other tools between letters assessments, some of the Haggerty phonemic awareness pieces. We have others that we can use as well. So again, we're set up pretty well there. Go ahead, Tom. And as Angela also mentioned, probably the biggest new piece here for us will be the development of personal reading plans. Originally, we were under the assumption that any child that scored below the 25th percentile on the screening test would require a personal reading plan that is pretty comprehensive. DPI has offered some clarification, some common sense clarification actually, that we can actually use our screening assessments to help guide that. So not every student that fails to meet the benchmark will need a personal reading plan. We can get corroborative data to verify that, which is really, really important. We know that not everybody performs well on a single test. So we want multiple data pieces to be able to justify needing that personal reading plan. You've got a number of bullet points there that plan must contain, including the skill needs that children have, the goals and benchmarks for that child, the reading interventions we'll offer them, along with any other associated instructional services. One change for us will be weekly progress monitoring. So any child on a personal reading plan will need to be assessed with a brief progress monitoring assessment every week Typically, a lot of the kids that we work with in interventions, it might be every other week, maybe even every third week. But every week, those students are going to need to be progress monitored so that we can determine growth, and after 10 weeks, provide a plan update to parents. And one other bullet point there is just providing some explicit and written out strategies that parents can use at home to support their kids. Basically, the plan's complete when we've met those goals of the plan and the school and the parents are in agreement that we're on the right page. The goal, of course, is to have kids meeting proficiency on the state assessment by the end of third grade. Go ahead, Tom. And then this is just a flow chart that I created for our teachers and for our staff to just sort of show what we have to deal with here. I'm not going to go through the whole flow chart, but you can see. Again, these pieces, a lot of them we've done over the past decade. It's part of why Mukwonago, for the second straight year, highest K-12 Waukesha County district in terms of third grade ELA performance. But the timelines are going to be a crunch for us, and we have a lot of work to do there to make this happen. So there you go.
And so I think the bottom line is that even though there's a lot of moving parts here and there's some challenges with the timelines, we are in really great shape in Mukwonago with respect to Act 20. And that is really largely due to the hard work and the forward thinking of the student learning department with Ben, Michelle, Stephanie, who was in this position before. They were really thinking ahead of what was needed, and they were engaging in the right work. So that curricular resource that we have at K2 is very strong in those critical foundational skills. It follows science of reading, so we're in great shape there. The letters training that they thought ahead to do before the law was even a thing has really positioned us in a great place where a lot of districts are now scrambling. We have already completed that requirement. And then, as Ben said, a lot of the processes that are part of this law are things that we've been doing for a number of years. We really do have a strong process in place for identifying kids who need extra support and then coming up with what those specific supports are. So there's challenges for sure, but we are really in great shape with this. And I would like to really thank Ben and Michelle for all the work that they've been doing to prepare both the teachers and the administrators to roll all of this out very soon. Do you have any questions for us?
Good job, Ben and Michelle.
I have a question. Can we go back to slide, I think it was 4? Mr. Casa, you talked about the law and then DPI implements it. But is this the one where it talks about the science?
Probably one more slide.
One more slide back, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Forward or back?
Back.
3.
Go the other way.
Slide 3.
There you go.
You talked about, or where did I see this now? I'm sorry, I didn't write down the slide. You have to go by the science.
Yep.
Remember that term that was up there? Is that a controversial thing? Is that real hard science that everybody agrees on? Is there room for different interpretation? Or are there going to be different folks to say this science, and then we're going to be like, well, how do we go about this?
So the science of reading that we're going off of is the brain-based research that's been done about how kids learn how to read. And so that's, honestly, the science of reading has been around for a really long time. It's just the focus has been on looking at and comparing that when we were using the cueing system, there was no research to support that students were learning to read. But when we implement these strategies, that's showing, even on brain scans, how kids learn how to read. And so when they're doing certain activities, they can actually see the different parts of the brain lighting up. And so that research is what they're talking about. It's based off of brain-based research and how kids learn how to read, and then taking the strategies.
Okay.
And then
That's helpful. I guess what I'm getting at is, did the law define who defines science? Or do we get to pick and choose?
Yeah, so actually there are some pieces of the legislation that were pretty specifically crafted and very narrowly crafted, which is why when DPI was tasked with creating that early literacy curriculum committee, I think they landed on a whopping total of 4 or 5 resources that they were able to recommend based on the parameters that the law specified. DPI actually came back later and said, no, we would like to expand that list a little bit more because 4 or 5 resources is pretty small when all our things are considered. So they were pretty narrow in terms of what their definitions of those pieces were.
Okay, and overall, we're happy with that, how they defined it, I guess? For the most part? I just want to be able to prepare for down the road if something controversial comes up.
When Act 20 was signed into law, I walked down to Stephanie's office after reading it, and I said, we're in good shape. And a year later, when there's more information that came out, I went back to her office again and said, I still think we're in really great shape. And then this summer, when there were more changes made, this time it was Angela's office I walked to, and I said, we're in good shape. So, I mean, are we happy with it? Yes. Are there challenges to this? Those timelines are going to be a burden.
Okay.
They're going to put our teachers through the ringer. They're going to make us do things on a timeline that are going to be a little bit more challenging. But we also feel like from the science of reading standpoint, the training of teachers, I mean, props to perhaps to Tom and our administrators for using ESSER funds to be able to do the letters training to get ahead of the game. We didn't know that was going to be required.
I had
But
nothing to do with that.
you said yes, and that's a big deal. But you know, when you do good practices, you know, it's not getting lucky anymore at that point. You're doing the right work. And so, you know, in a way, were we fortunate? Yes. Are we happy with those pieces? Yes. But what I'm happy with is the fact that our 3rd grade ELA achievement has gone up and up and up. That's what's most important to me. This kind of stuff, it's what we have to do.
All right.
The achievement's the important part.
Thanks for indulging with those questions.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Moving on to student service topics.
All right, I'm bringing 2 different pieces of information tonight. The first piece of information that I'm bringing is our parent engagement results for our Indicator 8 survey. So that particular piece of information is this survey is sent to every parent who has a child ages 3 through 17 in our district. We ask them for feedback regarding our services and our partnership with our families regarding special education needs. The second piece of information I'll be bringing tonight is an update on our DPI gift of our procedural audit that we have to do once every 5 years. So I'll bring you guys an update on that also. So the Indicator 8 survey is done once every 5 years. This year it was sent to 579 families. Of those mailings that went out, we had 25 preschool families, so ages 3 through 5 respond, and we had 80 K-12 parents respond, which
20%?
Yeah, actually not great. Well, it's not bad. So we did send out some frequent reminders. What I think is a little bit tough about it is it comes from DPI, and I don't know that every parent opens it. So we sent a lot of reminders saying like, hey, this is what it's going to look like. Please take the moment to fill this out on behalf of the district. So it was better than what we had the year prior, the 5 years ago. So I'm happy that we saw an increase in engagement that way. So I'm going to start first with just our preschool survey results. So like overall, I would just say overall, our results were really very positive. I felt really good about the results, especially our preschool results. Like almost all of them were 100% as far as parents feeling like they were an equal partner, as far as feeling like they're able to ask questions, they're able to be engaged, they feel like their child belongs in the school community that they're receiving their education in. So under the environmental piece of it, again, the feedback was really positive. When we started to look at the second domain of a respectful environment, all of our scores were really great. It's nice when they're 3, 4, and 5. The conversations are very rich, and like, how are we gonna get our child to learn through play? How are we gonna get our child like the immediate early childhood intervention that makes the biggest impact for students? And so again, I have nothing negative to say. Our results in our preschool survey were really great. There's one interesting trend that starts to develop, and at 95.8%, it's a pretty small dip, but one of the questions talked about, do school staff offer me information for my child with an IEP about one or more community resource? And so that piece of it does continue to show up in the next survey results that I'll show you. But overall, again, I feel really good about, and our staff should feel very proud of the feedback that we got from our parents regarding our preschool programming. Give you a second. I know it's linked in your stuff, but I'll give you just a second to look at that positive news. All right. So the next piece of the parent engagement survey was on our school age kids. So what did our results look like then once our kids are in our K-12 system? So our first, I'll just point out 2 particular scores of the 96.3. The first one, that I'm an equal partner with school staff in planning my child's IEP, and then school staff offer me information in ways I can understand. So our evaluation meetings, our IEP meetings can get very heavy in lingo, educational lingo. So like, all of a sudden it's like this acronyms come fast and furious. Craig, you would really struggle. There's a lot of acronyms.
Thank you.
But our whole goal is to make sure that our parents are understanding the information that's coming, and that we're taking a moment to like stop and ask for questions and make that a partnership conversation. And I think I see those 2 scores in particular as being something that I would want to continue to have a high trend in. So those were 2 that I pointed out. The other one too, the next one, looking at our respectful environments. In an IEP meeting, we can talk about my concerns and ideas, and also that school staff ask me if my child's services are meeting the needs of my child. And so again, a little bit of a dip on the if we're engaging parents in that back and forth discussion. That's something for me to keep an eye on, for our district to keep an eye on. But again, I feel really good about the fact that our parents are feeling like their concerns, their celebrations, their fears, all of that information is being discussed, and that they feel it's a trustworthy relationship that they can have. Okay, and then that trend I referred to before about the community resources. So if you start to look at number 15 and number 18, you start to see that they're looking for more information about resources, whether that's with questions with evaluation, whether that's with transitional needs. That was like one area when we were looking through the results, I started to reflect on. We have a transition coordinator for our high school special education, somebody who works with Randy Jensen, works with our 8th to 9th grade students, and then our students who might be in our 18 to 21-year-old program. There's not as many resources out there for our elementary aged kids when it comes to community resources. They're there, but they're not just as widely I don't think is widely advertised. And so that was a good piece of learning for us. And so our next step will be reaching out to our local neighborhood districts and figuring out, like, what are you doing to promote, if it's something at Children's Hospital, if there's an event through a parent advocacy event that we can encourage our parents to attend. So I thought it brought up some good learning for us. And then also just something that I'm always kind of monitoring and watching is that my child receives the services, accommodations, modifications, and supports that are written into their IEP. So just making sure that our general education staff are always aware of that document, and then what are those pieces of information that need to be shared across content areas. Do you guys have any questions about those? before I move on? Go ahead, Jake.
So a survey, do they have an opportunity to write in specific information or provide direct feedback?
They do not.
Do not? Okay.
Mm-mm. It doesn't stop us from sending something on our own if we wanted to explore that. Any other questions?
I just want to make a comment just about the overall communication from the district. I have a kid at every level. The communication this year has been phenomenal. Sometimes all you would get is like an email towards the end of the quarter or semester. All the teachers have been on top of it from like the first week. It's much appreciated.
Oh, that's great. So the next piece of information is on our Reading Drives Achievement Audit. So this audit is also something that's done once every 5 years. And so this year we were just a really lucky winner. And so ultimately, the goal of the audit is to make sure that we are meeting our legal requirements and staying in compliance. And overall, really, is about improving our outcomes for students with disabilities. And sometimes when you're writing an IEP, there's a lot of pages involved in that. And so we always need to make sure that we are doing what's right by kids first and foremost, but then also making sure that we're compliant with the different pieces, the dates, the timelines, making sure the different pieces of an IEP have to be talked about maybe more than once. So I could really go down a rabbit hole on that, so I'm just not going to. So let's take a look at our results. So what happens is we submit a pool of approximately 400 IEPs, and then out of those 400 IEPs, the Department of Public Instruction randomly pulled 27 IEPs as part of those IEPs, as far as annual IEPs, and then also those evaluations. So if you're looking at this graph, in addition to that, they're looking at the implementation piece of an IEP. So you have this document, this is what it says you're doing, but are you doing it? And show me the proof that you are as part of the audit. And then also looking at any of our students who have a shortened day that is outside of what a typical student attends. So if they leave early to go to a therapy, if they leave early to maybe go to ABA therapy, something specialized, we would need to be talking about, are we still providing them a free and appropriate public education? And then we also look at discipline. So our audit results show that we have some work to do. Overall, I didn't read an IEP that I was like, oh, this is not a good document. They were good documents. We're missing things that need to be part of it. Are we addressing every aspect of a child in the way that we really need to be? Not in all areas. And so we have some work to do. So part of our work then, between now and January 15th, we have different groups of teachers coming in. We're going to go through the learning that we did with the IEP audit. So what we're going to be doing with staff is for each IEP, there was 23 questions. So you have one document, and you have to go through 23 different questions in that particular document. So it's a pretty laborious process. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll be bringing groups of teachers in. We'll have some follow-up conversations with parents, and then we will be submitting evidence of those corrections to DPI. In addition to that, we'll do another full day of professional development in January. So after we close out the corrections, then we have a monitoring window between January 15th and April 15th. And then DPI will pull an additional sample of our documents during that time to make sure that the learning that we put in place, that the teachers are responsive to that learning, and that we're making those changes. So we'll continue to do that professional development during the spring of the year, and then also again at the start of next school year. And that's it. Do you guys have any questions about that process? It's a checks and balances. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
All right, no questions. Thank you. I just want to point out before Tom starts, you weren't the one who cleared out the room today. I was like, what? Yeah. All right, up next, finance and facility topics.
It'll definitely empty out now for those who've stayed. All right, if you don't mind, Kelly Kubneski and Eric Kirch are here, and they're going to help out with number 5, the district network connection and potential partnership with the Village of Mukwonago. So I'm going to skip to that one and have you guys come on up here. We'll get this party started so you guys can go after we're done talking about this here. But we find ourselves at a time right now where there's a little bit of a village project going on, and we'll talk about those two things here, what this opportunity is here. So in essence, Eric and Kelly are here to talk about more technical things that are beyond me, but ultimately our district is connected through a fiber optic network that connects from Big Bend Elementary, runs through the telephone lines, mainly all above ground, and then it goes all the way up to North Prairie, to Prairie View Elementary School. So all internet originates at Mukwonago High School, and then through the fiber optic network, it goes out to all of our schools. So there's a lot of to me, it's a little bit of magic. I have no idea how this stuff works. I just know I turn my computer on, and there's the internet. But at the end of the day, so the Village of Mukwonago is going to do something similar in terms of building out their network. Basically, when you build out a network, you have the opportunity to either run it in the phone lines, or you can trench it underground. The Village of Mukwonago is currently looking to, and Dale, do you know a little bit about this through your?
Little bit.
Okay, through your village work. The village is looking to basically connect from the village hall on Rivercrest Court up to the Mukwonago Library, and they're going to undertake a rather large project that's going to lay things underground. And I don't know if there's other elements to that, if there's like sewer work.
Fire and police, yes.
Yeah, okay, so there's some deeper project that's going on altogether. But when you lay the fiber optic network, typically you're going to have multiple strands that you're going to use and not use, and it's available for use in our situation. So, Eric, can I have you just kind of explain just a little bit more in depth verbally about this option that we have? I'll kind of I'll add a few things here, but ultimately we might be able to, if the Village of Mukwonago would agree, that's how many lines are they putting in here when they trench underground? Like there's going to be 100 strands or 50?
Yeah, they're doing like over 100 strands.
Talk in the microphone, please, Eric.
The village has got over 100 strands, I believe, that they're trenching into the whole community. They're mainly focused on well stations and the fire department, the police department, the village hall, and some of the other like maintenance facilities throughout the village. We started investigating, talking to the village after we noticed that they were starting to begin doing some waterway work kind of by Blue Bay and the village pumper. The reason that came up is when SOAR was bought, we had to buy a point-to-point internet connection from the high school to SOAR. While that system does work and it works quite well, we have to pay Spectrum a premium to do so. One of the options that we're looking at, like Tom was saying, is to try and work with the village and see if they will let us use some of the fiber optic that they will be trenching in, so that we can get that internet connection from SOAR back directly to the high school without having to pay Spectrum a large sum of money every year. If we are able to run fiber optic from SOAR to the village hall, and from the old district office location by the library to the library, that cost will be able to pay itself off within about 2.3 years instead of paying a continuous amount year after year after year.
So I guess visually, if you take a look at the map here right now, so this is the downtown Mukwonago, or the Highway 83, and the red line indicates the district fiber optic network that comes from Mukwonago High School down 83, and then it goes over to the old district office. And if you don't know where that is, that's on Division Street, right across from the library. So we are already our
Pius Church?
Yes, correct. It used to be the old rectory for that church, and at some point it became the district office until this building was built, I believe, in 2012 or 2013. So you can see the green line then is an extension off of that red fiber optic network, where that's actually underground, correct?
Correct.
So that that green line just goes into Parkview Middle School and out of Parkview Middle School over to district office and then to Clarendon. But if essentially the village is going to trench all the way to the library back down 83, and then if we kind of just take a look at that, if it came all the way down 83 here and then up to Village Hall, we would have the option, I guess, the ask of the village, and this like with a technical how this actually works slips me, but there's we would need 2 strands. They have an option up to 100 strands or a lot, which is likely never going to be used. It's just too much data. It has a huge volume to carry a lot of data, but they're likely never going to use that much. So our ask to them is if we could basically piggyback off of that down to this connection point, and then through the telephone lines, we would pay to have it connected here. And we could essentially just piggyback off of their network, and then we could stay on ours. I think the kind of the back and forth then is they might say, hey, okay, school district, like that's what we would hope is they'd say that the sound of that is good. Could we also do the same thing and then get to some of our pumping stations or this district maintenance garage down here? So I think we can help each other because there's a lot of infrastructure that we already own, and that there could be, it seems it makes natural sense in terms of partnering. The village has been great to partner with in a number of ways over the years, and this potentially might be the next one that comes our way. So what we would have to do then ultimately, as the village does this work, if there was an agreement, we would, again, pay to have the fiber optic network extended in yellow there. And then across from the library, the village would trench all and get it into the library. And we are already here in the telephone pole here, correct, Eric?
Yes.
And we would just have to make the connection ourselves to get it there. And then we would be connected and be able to use everything that the village has. And then likewise, they could use the things that we have. Am I saying that correct?
Yeah.
I've been practicing.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So this is ultimately, if with village cooperation, would be about a $30,000 investment on our end to get rid of an annual $15,000 bill. Yes. So it's a one-time cost to eliminate something that would be ongoing, and then the partnership could potentially grow from there. And we're simply just asking permission from you. Can we investigate this further? Can we go to Village Hall, open up the conversations without making any final decisions? But can't just do this on our own. We need you find individuals to give us direction.
I'm good with it.
It's good payback.
Smart.
You want me to add anything?
Sure. What else do we need to talk about, Eric?
There are larger ramifications for doing this. This is just one step. By integrating our fiber optic connection between here in the school district and the village, it also opens additional opportunities that we don't currently have. For example, if the police department wanted to interconnect their fiber optic with us with this junction point at the library, they would be able to view cameras or door access directly from the police department without having to go out through the internet and then back in. That would create some latency or lag. With having it right on the fiber optic, they'd be able to see the cameras instantly, even before deploying any teams in case of an emergency. It would also allow for the police department to put an antenna on the building and route their radio communications through the fiber optic at the high school or any of the other buildings in the entire school district and relay off of that using fiber optics. The larger, bigger picture, which is costly, is to join something called WeCan. WeCan is spearheaded, and the president is Waukesha County School District's IT director, Steve Solomon. And he has been working diligently with other communities, including Franklin, Kettle Moraine, Muskego, Norway, and they have been integrating their school networks and municipality networks together. And they constantly keep asking us for if we would like to join, because we are very close at Big Bend to Muskego, Norway's next fiber optic hop. That is a more pie-in-the-sky, large-scale picture. The cost to do that fiber connection and join into that WeCan would cost about over $350,000, but that would not have to rely on the district to shoulder that cost alone. it provides immense amount of bandwidth to the village. Right now, they currently have a 100 meg connection from what I understand, talking to them. This would give them 10 gigabit, light year speed difference in communications on the internet. But because Big Bend is close to Muskego, Norway, it also would warrant talking to Big Bend because they're closest, and Vernon, and any of the other municipalities such as North Prairie, if they decide to connect to Prairie View to Kettle Moraine.
Do you want to talk through these maps here that I have up on the screen here?
Yeah,
Eric?
so this map that we have up on the screen at the current moment shows you Big Bend Elementary School. I believe it's hard to see, but I believe it's on the left-hand side. It shows a route that potentially could take from our fiber optic on the network going all the way to Muskego, Norway's closest point. Why we would do this is it provides us to reduce our transport costs. Those are $15,000 a year as well. It also provides us with some minor redundancies. So, for example, if fiber optics was cut at anywhere from the high school down, so like here, Big Bend, they would be able to get a route out to the internet without disrupting state testing or communications in the building from that point.
So if a telephone pole got hit, right, and the fiber optic network got interrupted, we could then have a back channel to not have an interruption.
Correct.
So this would require us to connect to Muskego here from Big Bend over. That would give us one connection out and in. And then over in North Prairie, kind of same deal there. As you can see on that map here with Prairie View Elementary here, we'd go up County Road E and wiggle over. And is that?
That's McGee Elementary School.
McGee Elementary School,
Kelmer,
right.
yeah.
So
that would be the other end.
A lot of school districts and municipalities are engaged in this type of work, and we're not asking for permission on this yet, but this is certainly lending itself, this initial conversation, this smaller focus with the village is lending itself to say, hey, should we think bigger? This is something that could benefit the entire community. More to come on that.
Kelly, Eric, as Giga blasters and all this stuff going on, pretty interesting stuff. Excuse me. Why does my phone in my car go wonky in front of Field Park? What's the deal?
Magnets, I don't know.
Every school you can drive by.
Will this double strand bigawatt stuff, is this going to help my phone not to go wonky?
Probably not.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, unfortunately not.
It's just us two?
Carolyn?
Mine does too.
Okay.
Yeah, I could. Yeah. Is there a downside to any of this? I'm trying to find it. I don't see a downside, but I don't know if you have a. Is there like a?
No, in fact, most communities are starting to do this to reduce their operating costs. For example, we all hate the Spectrum bill that we get every month at home. This is a way to avoid that, to make us more self-sufficient and create our own network with the village, sharing our resources. For example, if the village asked us as part of this agreement, they had data backups. A lot of data backups are physically located at a different location in case a tornado hits. The village would be able to store backup data at our data center. We've got plenty of open rack space. And with their fiber optic connection joining with us, they would be able to receive and send their backups without even using like the fire station or the police department or the village hall. So it's a goodwill measure. It's a lot of handshaking, and it's a benefit to the community as a whole. I see nothing but positives to it. There are very few negatives. The one negative is the upfront cost of these projects, but once it's done, it stays in the ground or it stays on those poles for decades. And fiber optic, if you think about it very quickly, it's like when you take spaghetti noodles before you boil them, it's essentially you got a whole bunch of them. And the village and us, we only use a couple of those like noodles, so to speak. The rest of it's dark. It just sits in the ground, and it's there for future expansion on however we choose to use it. So same thing, like we only use 2 pairs, so we use 4 strands. That gets us 10 gigabit between this building and every other building in the district. But there are another, there's going to be another 8 strands that are just sitting dormant. And that's what we would offer to the village is, hey, you guys can use some of this if you can get me a connection from SOAR all the way to the library. So
That would help with security too, right? The police being able to see inside the building.
Absolutely, yeah. So walkie-talkies, communication devices that they may have, as long as they have an internet connection, they'd be able to route through the building. Yes, correct. Same thing, door access. If there was an emergency and we gave them access in the future, they would be able to lock all the doors in the building, you know, obviously with permission or however they would accomplish that without even needing to step foot within the building. They could do that from the police department itself. Fire department has recently asked us for radio access on the network. While we are going to allow that right now, it would having the fiber optic interconnected would give them better and easier access in real time in the event of an emergency. They'd be able to route traffic from their radios in the building right to the police station or the fire department right away without having to do a bunch of extra legwork to do so, yes.
Well, talking to Kelly in the past, about a year ago, you talking about switches that need to be upgraded or replaced.
Verkada topic, when we toured Waukesha, we realized that our infrastructure will be end of life soon in the next couple years, and if we wanted to move forward with Verkada, we should consider doing the infrastructure first. And so we're going to go out to bid for infrastructure under the E-rate program, which would be subsidized quite heavily. We have Category 2 funds available in the $380,000 range, which would be able to contribute to that. So we'll see what the bids come back this cycle, but that would be the first step. But we need to do it regardless because we are end of life.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll take the next steps, keep you posted, and when there's
Yes,
time for
please.
action, we'll clearly bring that to you ahead of time. Eric and Kelly, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I just have a couple of just kind of informational pieces. First one there under finance facilities. We're going to issue our 4K contracts to our 3 community partners, YMCA, Kids Connection, and Verdant Child Development Center. We'll look for those to be returned by the end of the calendar year, so we have that solidified as we walk into the 4K enrollment night. So we're already into 25, 26 when we start talking about things like that. So just staying proactive, and we're going to move forward to keep our 4K program status quo, but we will issue renewed contracts to all 3 community partners. Any questions? Okay, next one then, I just quickly want to just give you a little bit of information here in terms of our tax levy and how it went out to our 11 municipalities. So we have, you know, a couple that are down in Walworth County. If you take a look at the screen here, everybody has, you know, their fair market property value or equalized property value. Means the exact same thing. So here, this is 23-24. This column is 24-25. And then we have the dollar value changes here. So from 23-24, $5.2 billion to this current year, $5.5 billion. We increased $320 million of district-wide property value. When we look at each municipality's share year by year, so the town of Eagle had 8.1 of all district property value, and the following year they had 8% of all district-wide property value. So ultimately, Eagle, the town of Eagle, went up $20.9 million, but as a share of the district, they went down by about 0.1%. So you can see for the most part, almost all municipalities here in this red, they have a slightly shrinking share of district-wide property value. The one that I'll just kind of highlight here is the Village of Vernon. The Village of Vernon went up $111 million in property value, and their share went from 25.4 of all district property value to 26% even. So then when we just fast forward here, we take a look at the tax levy. That gets divvied out based on everybody's share. So it's just really prorated. However much property value you have relative to the whole district is what your share is. You can see every municipality, with the exception of Genesee and the Village of Vernon, all had a decreasing share. So in the Village of Mukwonago last year, we issued $7.7 million of tax levy. This year it went down to 7.5. So the Village of Mukwonago collectively, that tax bill is going to shrink. The Village of Vernon, on the other hand, as their share increased, you can see that they have a slightly increasing share. So the bottom line is here is that when we certify our tax levy here, we were at $32.4 million last year. Now we're at 2.3. That's the 0.5% decrease that we targeted. We hit it, but how that gets distributed looks different, right, from municipality to municipality. And that's really something that's out of our control. We don't control property values and how they increase or decrease, but we'll share this information with municipal clerks, see if there's any questions. Rarely, I don't hear back too often, but by and large, our school district is going to see a smaller tax bill. Okay? So I just want to bring that up. That's information. Is there any questions? Okay. Then the next one then is just talking about our 403B match. As you know, the district offers a $500 match for our teachers, our new hires, each year that they contribute for up to $500 of their own funds. The district matches that. How that works right now, the ask here is that we would like to change this. How this works right now is that if we have a teacher who's working for us and they defer $500 into a 403B, we then match that, but we put that into a bank account at Citizens Bank. And this account has about $800,000 in it right now. Once an employee, once a teacher who's a part of this match has been with us 5 or more years, whatever money we've been setting aside is theirs. They're fully vested. We say this belongs to you. But the problem is that it belongs to them, but we're still holding it. All right? We have this, again, an account at Citizens Bank that's earning positive interest, although probably a much lesser one than they could maybe potentially invest in. What we're proposing right now is simply to kind of take a hammer to that Citizens Bank account, divide that out into every teacher has a share. We do that math as of September 30th of each year, so we have the recent math of that 800,000, how much belongs to each teacher in our district. And what we would like to do is then to forward that to each teacher's 403B account. So when they log into their 403B and they do their retirement math and they do their planning and whatnot, they're not seeing the money that's already been set aside and technically belongs to them. What we'd like to do is forward that money right into their account. It belongs to them. That would give them the opportunity to invest it. You know, if there's 20 or 30 options at WEA member benefits, they could choose the one that fits for them. Right now, it's earning the rate of interest that only Citizens Bank is really, it's that standard bank rate. We'd like to open this up, put it in their hands to have and to hold. Should they need it, need an early withdrawal, they could do that. This doesn't cost the district anything. This is simply just a transfer of money to say, look, this does belong to you, and we're going to physically demonstrate that right now by making a transfer and putting this into individual accounts.
Tom, the funds would revert back to MASD if they're not if they don't stay for 5 years.
Correct.
Is that ironclad?
Yes.
Like there's no way they can take it out at the 4th year and we never see it again.
Can happen. So if what we would do is we would set up a relationship with, we work with 2 403B vendors. WEA member benefits is one of those. We would work with them. That's where the majority of our people have 403Bs. And we could put in the stipulations that spells out our vesting schedule so that if a teacher leaves after 3 years, they can't get into that money until their 5th year. And when they leave, that money comes back to us. So it would be protected. Good question, Mike. Any other questions? Do you have any issues if we were to bring this forward in the very near future for an action item?
I do not.
I think this is definitely employee favorable without costing the district another nickel.
Jake?
All right.
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jake. I'll come back to the enrollment update. We'll end on that one. I'll just fast forward here real quick to the business partnership opportunity. Citizens Bank of Mukwonago has approached us about offering Fast M branded checking accounts that would have a Fast M checks and Fast M debit cards.
No Indians on it? Only Fast M?
We can check in, Craig, but as of right now, they just...
Hell, Hank's buses used to have Indians on them. All over the place.
Okay. You want me to go ask that? I know you do.
You go in? I'll go in. I'll ask.
Let me just start with what they proposed, okay? All right, I can't demand that they propose something. They propose something, let me present it to you here.
Okay.
They've offered to have Fast M checking accounts that would ultimately call for the district lending our logo. It'd be used on checking accounts, debit card accounts. every time a debit card would be used.
Our logo is the Indian or the fast down?
Or how about we ask them if they can have an option when people are wording their checks?
I mean, last time I looked, we are the Indians, right? Or are we not? Did we change that in the last 2 weeks?
That's the high school.
As it was explained to me, our logo is the Fast M. Our mascot is the Indians, as I understand it.
Nickname.
No,
Or
the
nickname.
mascot is
Nickname is
Thank
the
you,
Indians.
because the mascot
Yes,
is,
thank you.
is a media word that gets people riled up.
Yep, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Don't want to get
So-
anybody riled up.
Citizens Bank would like to work with the school district to give us money.
Okay.
Okay?
All in favor, say aye.
Do you have any issues if we were to bring back something more formal? Again, this is something that we're lending our Fast M, which we don't give out unless there's specific permission. We're asking for that permission right here to at least take the next step, and we'll bring back something more formal.
As a 40-year customer of Citizens Bank, I say we move forward with the fast down.
Thank you.
With an
Craig.
option of the Indian.
With an option.
Right.
We certainly can ask if that is an option.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then lastly, then I'll go through our district enrollment here real quick. We saw some of these things earlier here tonight. So I'll go through this. Here we go. This is the information this goes back to 1976, 77. So you can see our district was under 4,000 students at that time. And then you can kind of see as throughout the 90s and 2000s, we hovered in that 4,000 student range. We kind of came back down in 14, 15, and then back up again. So we're just in this little, these cycles that go up and down, and that's where we find ourselves. The subsequent slides, I'm just going to shrink this down really to the 14, 15 year and beyond. So we're really just going to look at the last 10 years, give or take. We saw this earlier. This is total enrollment, butts and seats. And then this is a little different. This is the anytime we say FTE, full-time equivalent membership, that's speaking to the kids. If you take a look at the map in the corner there, the number of kids who live in that map boundaries and attend public schools. Okay, so ultimately public school membership right there. All right, so you can kind of see that COVID year hit, bounce back up. When we do our math then for our revenue limit to define our budget, we take a 3-year average. So this is the same information just smoothed out, and we use a 3-year average. But I guess what I want to highlight right here is that we have a dip of students. We're at about 4,600 students here. We've been in the 4,600 range here for the last 5 years. So this drop off here ultimately shrinks the budget. And when we do our mathematics each year, the number in green shows us the basic revenue limit mathematics, and then there's something called a declining enrollment exemption. The declining enrollment exemption is the math says, hey, look, your counts are going down, but rather than dropping off $554,000 in this year, we're going to let you have it in your revenue limit as a one-time exemption, but come back next year and we're not going to factor that in anymore. So really it's a softening of the landing when you have a year-to-year swing in your 3-year average. So in our mathematics, as we finalize this here at the end of October, when those numbers ultimately went final, that's when this information became known to us. So we just basically more or less found this information out in late October, but bring this back to you right now. So when we look to right-size staff and make adjustments and staff out according to how Angela and Rachel have discussed here earlier, we are at least targeting that we have to put this into our plans, right? We have to make sure that we keep our budgets balanced. We always have, and I see that continuing into the future. But I just want to bring this to your attention right now. Any questions so far?
Does that soft landing have any affect our taxes at all, or anything to do with?
Well, in a sense, Craig, like when you have declining enrollments, your budget's shrinking.
Understood.
And so like that $54.2 million, right?
In the red.
Yes. So like if we look at that full bar graph there in 24, 25, if we were to add those two numbers together, let's just round it up to $55 million. $55 million is our budget, is our operating budget. It's the basic revenue limit math. Count your kids, multiply it by 11,325. And then the state will say, here's our share of that, and the rest goes to taxes. If the overall bar graph were to shrink and shrink and shrink, that could lend itself to declining taxes or shrinking taxes. All right. The thing, I guess, to just keep in mind here, and I don't mean to go off topic here, but I blame Craig for asking the question, is that once we define our revenue limit, the amount of money the district has to work with, there's a teeter-totter action between state aid and property taxes. So as state aid goes up, property taxes go down, or if state aid were to go down, property taxes would go up. So there's a couple factors here, but ultimately, if we had a shrinking number of students, then yeah, your operating tax levy could go down. Does that make sense? Am I answering that for you, Craig?
Got it.
Okay. All right, so then we'll just quickly go school by school, then I'll end it up with open enrollment counts here. So some schools are staying stable. You can see an example of that here in Big Bend, hanging out in that mid 400 range here. Clarendon has a history of going up and down almost religiously, up and down here. Taking a look at Eagleville. Eagleville has been relatively stable over time here. Prairie View Elementary, likewise, has increased there a little bit. It has to do with introducing 4K into that school a couple years ago. Section and Rolling Hills are pretty similar here. You'll see you have Section here. Again, Carolyn, I don't know this, but if you just take a look at the demographics of the type of houses, you know, all of our neighborhoods throughout the district are a little different. Section has some higher priced houses, I'd say, as does Rolling Hills. I don't know if that's ultimately just being demonstrated here with a lack of new student move-in that we've felt for 20 to 25, 30 years. Certainly not seeing that right now. Parkview Middle School, you can see this here for the current 7th, 8th grade class. We're always kind of hovering between 700 and 800 students. Historically speaking, in Mukwonago High School is in the 1,600 student range. So dipped down a little bit last year and bounced back up this year. Last two counts then, slides rather, the count of open enroll in students. So we are really just kind of, I think, hitting our long-term stride right now in terms of open enrollment students. We have about 600 students from other districts that take vacant empty seats, and as they take those seats, this brings in about $5 million of revenue to the district. And then we have about 300, low 300s in terms of open enroll out. We just kind of, again, see a stabilization there of open enroll in or open enroll out. We are a net open enroll, I guess, winner, to use it in the air quote sense, that we can't demand students come to our schools, but if a student chooses to apply because they like what we offer, how we teach things, then they apply. If we have room, we can grant that room. So I know this information was requested here, and I guess, yeah, Jake.
Yeah, question on the open enrollment, the open enroll in. Is that more a function of demand, would you say, or acceptance rates?
Demand. That's demand.
So what would you say our acceptance rate is?
Joe, you'll know that one better than me.
And the reason I ask is, like, how much of the downward trend in overall enrollment could potentially be offset? Is there an opportunity there?
So there's very few denials. When the board set open enrollment seats this year, we were full in special education program. So we have not accepted any students who are coming to us with an IEP, a special education need. And then the other automatic denial that we have is kids who are expelled in another school district. We haven't accepted the expelled students. Otherwise, those are the boundaries that we have to work within, and we've accepted, I would say, all other open enrollment applications have been approved into our school district.
So that would not, it's safe to say that would not be a lever.
We're not keeping hundreds of kids out. We're keeping a couple handfuls of students out based off of what our capacity is to serve, or if they have that expulsion on their record from another school system.
Got it. Thank you.
So then just the last slide here is we'll look to modify staffing levels to fit our budget and match our student enrollments. And then as we look ahead to building the 25-26 budget, we start that all over again. We'll have to make an assumption base of student enrollment as we build our budget. So I'll work with the board here. I'll ask each of you for what do you think is going to happen. I will average out your math and say that's going to be our assumption that we'll use as we move forward. So I'll let you influence what you think our count is going to be, and we'll build a budget accordingly. Any questions about that?
And this is an area where we know where the kids are who are coming to us and where our kids are going, which other school districts are going. So if you're interested in that information, we can provide that to you down the road as well.
Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to action items, hired retirements and resignations.
All right, we have our first announced retirement. So Bridget Christensen is a fourth grade teacher at Clarendon Elementary School who submitted.
What was the name?
Oh, Bridget Christensen.
Oh, be darned. Long timer.
Yep, 24 years in the district. So looking for approval of her retirement request.
I make a motion that we approve the retirement request.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
When does that take effect?
June 30th.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Up next is our executive session. According to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, we'll be discussing our transportation contract and a specific individual disciplinary action.
Motion to move into executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
We have to roll call. it.
Yep. And do roll call, please.
Mike,
Yes.
Jake,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Craig,
Here.
Crosby, yes.